Baker Mayfield's status is slightly up in the air right now for the final game of the season. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho, deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com, on Twitter at JYarcho_Bucs, one of the hosts of Locked On Bucs, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers and our every livers. And for that, we want to share our appreciation for your continued support of the show. And one way that you can support the show is becoming a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, exclusive content, exclusive conversations directly to your phone between me and you. You can join over at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs. This episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. On this episode, we are going to dive into that Locked On Bucs Insider mailbag, and I'm going to give you Evan Klosky's predictions for the Buccaneers this weekend. But first, we got to talk about Baker. So Baker Mayfield was injured against the Saints last week thanks to a hard late hit by Tyrann Mathieu. And although he finished the game, there are concerns now about Baker Mayfield's status going into the final week of the season, where the Buccaneers have to beat the Carolina Panthers in order to get into the postseason. There is a scenario where they don't have to win and they get in, but that would involve them tying the Carolina Panthers and then the New Orleans Saints tying or losing. And let's be real, if you tie the Carolina Panthers, you also don't belong in the playoffs. But the Buccaneers conducted a walkthrough practice on Wednesday, and head coach Todd Bowles told the media that had it been a regular practice, Mayfield would not have participated due to his injured ribs. Mayfield also spoke to the media, saying he's sore, but there are no broken ribs, which is certainly a positive sign, but he is also determined to be on the field Sunday. He told the media, quote, "Division on the line, playoffs on the line, going back to Carolina, yeah, I'll do everything I can," end quote. Now, here's my thing. If Baker can't go, Kyle Trask would be the one to step in. And, there was the quarterback competition in training camp and, all of that. On Wednesday, Trask took all of the starter snaps since Baker was considered, a do not participate. So how is this going to shake out? I think Baker starts and I think he plays. However, there should be a somewhat short leash on Baker Mayfield on Sunday. And while I have not been big on Kyle Trask, he did impress me through training camp. He did impress me in the preseason. And I have had firsthand witness account to kind of his progression and growth from one year to the next. I would be confident if I was the Buccaneers or if I was a Buccaneers fan watching this game Sunday, that he could help the Buccaneers beat Carolina this week on the road to clinch the division. If Baker goes out and struggles with his throwing strength, his throwing velocity, his mobility, and it starts to lead to problems, pull him. Get him out of the game. He will not come out on his own. Baker is a tough dude. We are talking Brett Favre level tough. He would have to be stretchered out before he's saying, I can't play. We saw that in Cleveland. We saw him battle through an injury to try to help the team win games. So he's not going to come out and willingly say, I can't do it. Bowles needs to make it clear to him that if he's struggling and being more harmful than helpful that Trask is going into the game. If he needs to, Bowles can even reassure him that this isn't going to be a Tom Brady, Drew Bledsoe situation. And if they clinch against the Panthers, that Baker would then get pulled and Kyle Trask would get the start in the postseason, if Baker is ready to play. It would not be one of those situations. He wouldn't lose his job, but that he would need to rest and not take on even more damage heading into the postseason matchup, most likely against a Philadelphia Eagles team that loves to get after the quarterback, and they do it really, really well. So at the end of the day, all that matters is the win. And I truly believe in my heart of hearts that can be accomplished with Kyle Trask under center this week. So while I expect Mayfield to play, I am not opposed to the coach pulling the plug and sitting him on the bench early in the game if we start to see some of those struggles because of the injured ribs. Again, Baker has played a lot better than people expected him to, than a lot of people even wanted him to. And yeah, he and the rest of the 52 guys on the roster had a crap game on Sunday against the Saints. But you go back and you look at Baker's overall performance this season, he's been good. He is one of the main reasons that the Bucs are even in this situation to begin with. So if they make the playoffs, Baker should get the start, no doubt about it. But I think they can make the playoffs without him under center this week, and it's going to be a lot better for him to not take more shots to the ribs heading up against the Eagles or the Cowboys or whoever they face than it would be for him to end up getting blasted and really be forced out of playing in that opening week playoff matchup. I'm going to jump into the chat real quick. I did see this before the episode even started. Randy in the chat said, I'm from Cleveland and there isn't a quit bone in his body. He will play and win. Let's go Buccaneers and Browns. While I'm not a Browns fan, the Browns have been a lot of fun to watch this year. I love the Flacco story and kind of their resurgence here. And they have one of the best defenses in the NFL. They're a lot of fun. So, why not root for a Buccaneers-Browns Super Bowl? You have the Flacco story. You have Baker against his old team. You have the network losing their mind because you have two small markets facing off in the biggest game of the year. That's just fun for everybody. So, Randy, appreciate the comment. We have David in the chat saying, hopefully Wi-Fi holds up here at work. I hope so too, buddy. I know you're working and this is kind of an impromptu episode because of all of the issues that I had last night, but it is what it is. Still wanted to get you guys an episode. We got Jerry Wisdom in the chat. First timer. Jerry, welcome. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you joining the rest of the livers. And hopefully we see you more and more as the season continues and then into the off season. We got Jay Jones saying, honestly, I didn't know Julio Jones was a fan of the show, but I appreciate you. We truly have something to prove this Sunday. Baker, I'm feeling another lights out game from Baker as long as he's in. I think so too. I think this is a highly, highly motivated football team after that setback against the New Orleans Saints. And I'll certainly talk more about that on the crossover Thursday episode that I will have with Julian Council of Locked On Panthers coming up tomorrow. And then real quick, one more time, we got Josu Ortiz saying, guys, as a lifelong fan of the Browns, I can tell you that man will grit his teeth through a lot of pain and even severe injuries, unfortunately at the cost of play effectiveness. And that is 100% what I'm concerned about. I love the drive, the determination, the passion that Baker Mayfield has for the game. But if it becomes a detriment to the team in a game that they have to win to make the playoffs, I would rather he sit out. I think Kyle Trask can handle the Carolina Panthers. But we do have some insider mailbag questions that rolled in, and we are going to dive into some of those inquiries. That is coming up next here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They have last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. It's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. You guys know I used GameTime to take my son to go see the Tampa Bay Lightning play in Columbus. And you also know that my dad and I are using GameTime to go see the University of Illinois take on Ohio State in Columbus. And GameTime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase because they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. GameTime has deals on tickets right up to the start of an event or even up to an hour after it starts. It is the place to find last-minute seats. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Did see a question hop in here in the live chat that I want to address before we get into the mailbag. And we got Turtle Master 4 says, would you prefer the Eagles or the Cowboys, meaning in the playoffs, should they go on to win on Sunday against the Panthers? David actually talked about this on his episode on Tuesday, and I'm inclined to agree with him. I think based on the matchup, the Eagles are the team I would rather the Buccaneers face rather than the Cowboys. And a couple of things play into it. I think the Eagles obviously have been struggling down the stretch here lately, but also they've already played once. And the Buccaneers played them pretty close and pretty tough for most of that game. And it wasn't until, midway, almost late third quarter and into the fourth quarter that the Eagles really started to pull away. And you go back and you take a look at some of the injuries that had occurred during that game. Of course, there was the interception by Devin White where he kind of pulled up a little bit lame. Otherwise, he probably would have taken it maybe even to the house. So I think with that experience already, knowing that you played them pretty well the first time, knowing that they're struggling, the Eagles are the matchup that I would prefer for the Buccaneers. But I do want to dive into the mailbag. And we had essentially like a couple of different insiders send in pretty similar questions. So I'm going to start with new insider Scotty, who sent in two questions. And Scott, I'm going to save your draft question for later. There's plenty of time to talk about the draft, and we'll get to a point where I talk about it so much that you're going to thank your lucky stars that I'm not talking about the draft anymore. But for now, let's keep the focus on the task at hand and the season still in progress. So Scotty, as well as some other insiders, sent in similar questions. So Scott said, if I told you we are going to fire a coach that had zero money for the season, the biggest dead cap, was told by everyone that the most most games he'd win was 7, went into a hostile environment in Minnesota and New Orleans, and won with guts because the offense was still infantile, you'd call me crazy. Then I tell you he could win the conference, but they'll fire him. You'd ask me if it was the Panthers, the Titans, the Browns, the Raiders. It's the Buccaneers. Do you see how stupid it would be to fire Bowles? Let it simmer all offseason. Second year with the same offensive coordinator, same head coach, same quarterback. If it goes south, you will have at least rolled the dice on lightning in a bottle. What are my thoughts? Okay, we're going to put that on hold because next, Insider Aiden said PR says Bowles might get fired even if they win the division this weekend. What are your thoughts? Hold, because Insider Mike says, even if we win, do you think that Todd and Dave and Baker would be safe from the so-called hot seat? And if we lose, will we draft high enough to make a difference? Okay, so now I'm going to respond to all of this at once because it's just easier that way. First and foremost, I firmly believe that if the Buccaneers beat Carolina and make the playoffs on Sunday, Todd Bowles' job is safe. With Todd Bowles' job being safe, that means Dave Canales' job is safe. And that means it's a more likely, the odds are much higher that Baker returns as the quarterback next season. So that kind of goes back to what Insider Scotty was saying. 2 years now with the same head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback combination. I do think that's what happens. I also think that it is not out of the realm of possibility that the Buccaneers still move on from Todd Bowles, even if they make the playoffs. And I think a couple of things play into that. It'll be, number one, how do they get into the playoffs? Do they beat the Panthers, 13-10 on a last-second field goal, and it's another game that we like the one that we just saw Sunday, where it's sloppy, the team is flat, the offense is stale, the defense is bad. A lot of will factor into how do they make the playoffs, and then how do they perform in the playoffs. If they barely sneak in and barely beat the worst team in the NFL, and then they get their clocks cleaned by Philadelphia or Dallas or whoever they face, I think they're still kind of, the door is a little bit open for Todd Bowles to be let go. I would say it's about a 97% chance Todd Bowles stays. But again, there's a lot of other factors that kind of play into it. As far as the second part of Mike's inquiry here, if the Bucs lose, will they draft high enough to make a difference? I'm going to say something that I'll probably repeat 1,000 times during the draft process. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the difference in draft position, if they miss the playoffs versus win the division and get bounced in the first round, it doesn't matter. Because year after year after year, we see first round guys fizzle out. We see number one picks bust. It's a crapshoot. All you can do is make the best informed decision you possibly can and hope that it works. Every draft pick is a roll of the dice. It's not even a coin flip, because a coin flip's a 50-50 shot. This is like a Dungeons and Dragons 36-sided die that you're rolling here, because the myriad of outcomes is so broad and so huge that, again, all you can do is make the best informed decision you can by studying the film, talking to the player, and figuring out how their style fits in with the team that you have right now. You draft the best player available at a position of need, and you hope for the best. Sometimes it works with guys like Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Whitfield Jr., Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. There's all those kinds of examples. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get a Mark Barron. Sometimes you get a Vernon Hargraves. Sometimes you get a Jameis Winston. And, Jameis Winston's still in the league, and he'll probably be in the league for another 5 years. But is he a number one pick, in hindsight? No, he's not. So all you can do is try to make the best of the draft picks that you have. And again, I'm probably going to repeat that 100 different times throughout the draft process. But I do have another mailbag question that I want to get to. I went a little bit long on the Todd Bowles one. I have another mailbag question that I really want to address, plus Evan Klosky's predictions. That is coming up next here on Locked On Bucs. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet, like using their live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab, or you can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays. And of course, there's much more. The Buccaneers are 4.5-point road favorites against the Carolina Panthers with an over-under of 37.5. So if you think the Bucs are going to clinch their third straight division title and punch their ticket to the postseason, lay down that $5 bet and wind up with $150 in bonus bets to use all postseason long. The Bucs win, it adds to your good time. If they lose, it helps mend the wounds just a little bit. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Wrapping things up here on a live Wednesday edition of Locked On Bucs. And Demon Hunter in the chat says, as Insider Mike, let me add to my question and ask this. Let's say we went out and everyone is safe. Baker is re-signed. Do you think it's outside of the realm of possibilities that we pick up a quarterback in the first or second round? Someone like Michael Penix Jr. Okay. No, I do not think that is outside of the realm of possibility by any stretch of the imagination. And something else that I'm probably going to repeat about 100 times during the draft process, I do not like Michael Penix Jr. I do not think that he is going to pan out in the NFL. I don't think that the Buccaneers should go with a quarterback in the first or second round. But again, that's not to say that they won't, or to say that it's not possible if there's a guy that they really love. But when you take a look at what Penix Jr. has done, and yes, Washington is in the national championship, and they've had a great season, and Vita and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and Kate Otten were all there cheering on their school. Michael Penix was the worst quarterback in college football against pressure this season. And that pressure is nothing compared to what he's going to face in the NFL. So I'm very, very weary on Penix Jr. as an NFL prospect. I really honestly don't think that there is a franchise-changing guy in this draft. And I'll get into more of that when draft season approaches. But long answer to your question is not outside of the realm of possibility. I don't think they should do it. But if there's a guy that they fall in love with, they certainly could pull the trigger. Of course, a lot of that will depend on whether or not they sign Baker Mayfield back and what the terms of that contract are. But the other insider question that I wanted to get to was Insider David, who, buddy, I hope your Wi-Fi is holding up at work right now. He said, should the Bucs look into Dalvin Cook? Now, for those that may not know, Dalvin Cook was released by the Jets and will be a free agent with the hopes of joining a playoff team, something that the Jets were supposed to be. Now, I guess the Bucs could and should look into him, but at this stage, I'm not sure how much he helps the team. He really hasn't been very good in his limited opportunities this season with the Jets, and Breece Hall's been outstanding. So we can't simply say that it's because he's on the Jets and the Jets weren't a very good team once Rodgers went down, because Breece Hall has been incredibly successful. The other thing to keep in mind is that he's going to get to choose where he goes. And if he's picking from playoff teams that are interested, it may not be a long list, but I would say that the Buccaneers are probably towards the bottom of that list, just because the likelihood that they not only get past the first round, but have a deep playoff run is not very good. So I don't hate the idea of looking into Dalvin, maybe making a phone call to see what he's looking for, what kind of role he wants, what kind of money he may want on a prorated deal. But there would have to be some level of mutual interest and also a lack of interest from other playoff teams that he may want to go play for. Seems to me that the most likely landing spots for Dalvin Cook would be Baltimore, Dallas, Philadelphia, or Los Angeles. because if he goes there, he could be a backup or a rotational guy. He provides insurance for those running backs. Baltimore has had a lot of issues with injuries to running backs throughout the season. Dallas is always looking to improve their team. Philly is going to want some insurance. Los Angeles is kind of a team on the rise. Kyron Williams, while he's been fantastic, also has had injury issues this year. So those seem more like the logical landing spots to me for a guy like Dalvin Cook, but it's never, it never hurts to make a phone call and have a conversation. But let's go ahead and get to Evan Klosky's predictions. I told Evan when I had to cancel yesterday to still send me his predictions. And again, I apologize that the episode is in the middle of the afternoon, but dad duty's called and that trumps everything. But let me tell you, Evan sent me his predictions and he's got some doozies. We're going to start with his bold prediction, where Lavonte David essentially plays the role of Antoine Winfield Jr. and is the do-it-all guy for the Buccaneers against Carolina. So Evan says that Lavonte gets a sack, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and 10 tackles. Granted, the sack, forced fumble, and fumble recovery could all essentially happen on the same hit, but still, that's quite a stat line for a guy in the final week of the NFL regular season in a must-win situation to send the team to the playoffs. And honestly, outside of Antoine Winfield Jr., I can't think of a more appropriate player to do it and have that kind of impact in this game than Lavonte David. So also, no surprise, Evan is taking Lavonte as his predicted player of the game. And his final score prediction is something that I believe, was it Jay Jones or was it Jerry? Somebody in the chat said that they would not enjoy that close of a game with the Panthers when I mentioned like a 13-10 outcome or whatever. Evan has the Bucs winning this one 17-13. So might be a little bit closer than a lot of you are hoping for. To me, the Buccaneers have to come out and they have to essentially dominate from the jump. We're talking the Jags game type of domination. We're talking week 4 against the Saints type of domination. That's how this team needs to perform on Sunday. And I'll talk plenty more about that in the Crossover Thursday episode with Julian Council coming up tomorrow. But real quick, I wanted to mention something else. It happened right before I went live, where the Pro Bowl fan voting was announced, and Pro Bowl rosters will be announced Wednesday night at 8:00. And fan voting only accounts for 1/3 of the tally, but there were 2 Buccaneers that finished in the top 10 of their positional group in Pro Bowl fan voting. Antoine Winfield Jr. finished 9th among free safeties. 9th. The only other Buccaneer in the top 10, Devin Tompkins, finished as the number 10 fan-voted return specialist. No Tristan Wirfs, no Mike Evans, no Vita Vea, no Lavonte, not even Baker Mayfield. That's an abomination. And I really hope that when these Pro Bowl rosters are announced, the players and the coaches and the people that account for the other 2/3 of voting kind of fix that issue. But there has been no safety in the NFL better than Antoine Winfield Jr. this year. Vita Vea is week in and week out one of the most feared players in the NFL because of his ability to absolutely dominate anybody across the line of scrimmage from him. Mike Evans is having one of the best seasons of his career and is 2 touchdowns away from setting a career best for touchdowns in a season. Baker Mayfield has the most passing yards, passing touchdowns, and the best completion percentage that he's ever had in a season in his career. And Tristan Wirfs didn't allow a sack this season until he got hurt. I don't remember for the life of me. I think it was the San Francisco game. Was the first time he allowed a sack. It was because it was against Chase Young. After he got hurt, left the game and came back in. That was the first time he had allowed a sack all season, and I think he's only allowed 2. And he wasn't in the top 10 in voting. Get out of here. Get out of here. It just continues to show the Tom Brady effect. Nobody paid attention to the Bucs before Tom Brady. Nobody's paying attention to the Bucs after Tom Brady. There are Pro Bowlers and first-team All-Pros on this team, and nobody knows it. What better way to announce it than to dominate the Carolina Panthers and then shock the world and beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoffs? I'm going to jump in to the chat real quick one more time because I am out of time. Make It All Gaming says, no Mike Evans. What is happening? That's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. Let's see. Josu says, what the Saints did to us. Fan voting closed on Christmas Day. So, wasn't the Saints game. Demon Hunter says, Yaya is player of the game, 5 sacks, and a forced fumble and fumble recovery. I like that. And I like that you threw your prediction in now because we're not sure if we're going live on Friday or not. I have some family obligations. David and I have not ironed out our schedule yet. So there may be a pre-recorded episode coming to you Friday morning instead of a Friday live. I will keep you all updated on Twitter. And of course, I'll keep the insiders updated through our text messages. If you want to be privy to that kind of stuff, and I'm laying out the blueprints for insider only content. We're talking video episodes, we're talking audio for insiders only. If you want to be one, hit up joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs. Check out everything that I'm doing over at BucsNation.com. Follow on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JYarcho_Bucs. Make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel and turn on those notifications so that when I have to go live on a Wednesday afternoon at 2:30, you get notified and you can join in with the Every Livers here in the live chat. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.